Hi, this is Tony. I am just giving a reflection about, what God has been doing for me at Poland, like a reflection about it. And so I think the biggest thing that I'm like taking back from World Assembly is that God is calling me to be a global Christian, not only a Christian that's focused on what's happening in my on my campus or in my city or even nationally, but the being exposed to so many different movements around the world. I mean, there's like 155 student movements represented at a part of IFES and a part of World Assembly. They weren't all there at World Assembly, but 155 are affiliated with IFES. I now have this sense of burden and weight, and maybe some of that has come from the stories I've heard and the experiences I've heard. Maybe it's that, like, not only do I accept and realize that other people are fighting for the same gospel that we are fighting for in the States, and that I can call them brothers. I think, like, I started experiencing that they call me their brother in Christ as well. Even with the critique of how our government does things, and even with the critique of how capitalistic and dominating we can be to the rest of the world. So that was definitely shocking and humbling in a lot of process. I think one story that in particularly stood out to me was I got to talk. I mean, basically, you're talking to, like, 5 countries every 15 minutes. Like, every time you're walking down the street, you're talking to somebody from a different country that you've never heard about, with God doing some amazing things that you would have never heard about in any specific way had you not been there, or talking to the person. But in particular, I talked to some group of staff that came from Ghana, actually. And as an African American in this international scene, I really struggled with, like, feeling not completely a part of the U.S. and what people will perceive about U.S., but not really feeling a part of the world. Just kind of in a middle ground. And there was a guy named Emmanuel who's staff, probably general secretary, I think, for IFES in Ghana. And he looked at me and he said, "Hey, you look like my cousin." I was like, "What?" And he proceeded to say something that I felt was the most honoring experience I've ever felt in my life as an African American. He said, "So how many generations is your family from Africa? Is it 1 or 2 generations, or is it way, way, way back?" And I never actually had that experience of, like, wow, I am feeling very associated with being African for the first time. And I told him way, way, way back. And we talked and we laughed, and I got to talk to some of the other students that come from Ghana and the staff that's from Ghana that's here in the States, Joven. And so they were saying the same thing. "You look really similar to us. You look very similar." I was like, "Well, would you be willing to adopt me?" And it was kind of funny because he put his hand on my shoulder. He looked at me. He said, "Tony, you are no longer African American. When you go back, tell people that you are Ghanaian American." That was powerful. Shaped my heart. Really just made me feel like I belong to what the God is doing in the world. And even brothers and sisters, they see me and they say yes to that as well. So, I mean, I've come back, and hearing the plights of people, what they do in the world in Ghana, and the things that they have to deal with, how they have to contend for the gospel, has made me more passionate to contend for the gospel in an authentic way, without not being afraid of being shamed or ridiculed or debated. I'm not going to go in jail by saying Jesus on my campus. They may. So it's really motivated me to kind of see what God is doing in the world, how I can be a globally minded Christian, have a Christian response to some of the things that are happening in the world. That's my hope. That's my I guess it's my privilege to be following Christ, to be able to see such a grand scope of what God is doing.